For years, Disney films had been inked and painted by hand. Sleeping Beauty was the end of an era in many ways, and it was the last hand-inked, hand-painted film.
Now, Disney animation, as most people know, the animators draw in pencil, and then it went to the inking and painting department.
Which meant you took an animator's drawing, put cells over the top of the drawing, clear plastic sheets, and hand traced it with multiple colors. So Aurora in Sleeping Beauty would have this beautiful yellow line around her hair, and she'd have this fleshy line around her face, and her lips would even be a separate ink color.
It was so difficult, and then you would watch these girls, and they couldn't put their hand down on it because they would smear the ink, and they would do these wonderful sweeps and follow the line just so. It was marvelous to watch them work. They were really exquisite at what they did.
And then it would be turned over and painted, and that becomes the cell that you see on screen. It's very laborious, very time-consuming, and expensive.
Following Sleeping Beauty, the studio was in a real difficult situation. Sleeping Beauty hadn't made very much money, it had cost a fortune, and Disney was desperately trying to cut back.
Here's the studio that was built by animation and was maybe getting priced out of the animation business.
People were always saying to Walt, forget about the animation. You know, you're in television now, you're making live action movies, you've got a theme park. But Walt Disney had to make animated films because that's what he did, but how to do it cheaper?
Ub Iwerks was Walt's perhaps oldest friend. He had been Walt's first business partner back in 1922 in Kansas City when Walt started Laugh-O-Grams. And Ub was the man who animated Mickey Mouse in Plane Crazy and Gallopin' Gaucho and Steamboat Willie. He was also a mechanical genius.
Ub Iwerks invented a lot of things which were of vast importance for the studio, like the multiplane camera, which gave depth to the films, like the sodium screen process to be able to marry together the elements in live action and animation elements, like you see, for instance, in Mary Poppins.
Well, my dad, Ub Iwerks, got to thinking about how could we save some money? And one of the things that occurred to him is that the Xerox process, which they were coming out with these little copiers on the market, that maybe he could transfer an image onto a cell as opposed to a piece of paper. So he went out and did some experimenting, and it seemed to work fine.
So the Xerox process, pretty simple, operates like your average office copier, except in those days the Xerox machine they used took up 3 rooms. You would have a lens and an electrostatically charged plate, and the lens would take a picture of the drawing and transfer it to that plate. The plate would get dipped in toner, and then the toner would be transferred to a clear cell.
We started using it sneakily in Sleeping Beauty, and it was in the dragon sequence.
Thou sword of truth, fly swift and sure, that evil die and good endure.
I wanted to do a test case to see how Xerox would work and how it would look on the screen. So they tried it out on a short called Goliath 2.
I'll show ya, Pop!
Xerox didn't cut the quality of the animation. They didn't do limited animation. It's still a fully animated film. The acting is still there. It's still subtle.
And it worked fine. So it gave everybody confidence that, hey, we could do this with Xerox.
I think it must have been awful at the time to be an inker at the Disney Studios when Xerox happened, because you were out of a job all of a sudden.
And I think it was the best ink and paint department that ever existed on this earth. And I cried when they closed it down.
I think we did lose something because the Xerox line lacked the subtlety of the ink line, which was incredible.
But on the other hand, it was the gaining of the quality of the animators' drawings, especially in the way it was done in this film.
You dare go up there, you big long-legged lummox!
So I guess one could debate those points back and forth, you know. Was Xerox a step forward or a step backwards?
Over the next 50 years, the Xerox process didn't go away. It became a very, not only cost-effective way to make animated films, but also became more sophisticated. You could begin to use color Xerox lines later. and eventually it was supplanted with a computer which could use complete color lines, which got back to the look of the original inked movies. So again, Dalmatians becomes a real crossroads of technology meets art in a very, very clever way.
The Xerox worked well with the Dalmatians because they were black and white. You just needed a very easy outline of them, you know.
There's a correlation between the characters themselves being Dalmatians that are black and white, and then the very strong black lines of the Xerox process that was used to transfer the animators' drawings onto cells. The animators loved the process because rather than passing through the hands of other people to interpret their line drawings, they were finally seeing what was on their drawing board put up on the screen.
Well, we were delighted. The Xerox process was a delight, really, for the animator. At least we felt at the time, because this is the first time we ever saw our drawings directly onto the screen.
You old rascal!
There was apparently an inter-office memo that went around at Disney saying, please make your drawings neat. Don't show your construction, your roughs underneath there, because whatever those drawings are going to go right onto the screen. So the assistants had to go through and clean up the drawings. And of course, this must have been really nerve-wracking if you were working for someone really great, you know, Frank Thomas or Milt Kahl, who had done these amazing drawings, and then you have to go with your own pencil and mess with it.
Milt Kahl became militant about the people following them up, reducing the rough lines. Milt made them kind of stay away from that. So in some Milt Kahl scenes, you actually start to see glimpses of construction lines.
I've heard stories of Milt Kahl exploding because somebody changed his drawings. And as time went on, Milt was able to hold on more and more to his exact drawing.
Several of the 9 old men worked on 101 Dalmatians. Wolfgang Reitherman, who later was to direct The Sword in the Stone and then The Jungle Book, directed The Twilight Bark, one of the most magical scenes in the film.
Humans have tried everything. Now it's up to us dogs. The Twilight Bark.
I'll sound the alert!
One of the first dogs that picks up on the Twilight Bark alert is this little Scottish Terrier, and it's Jock from Lady and the Tramp. And the first moment you see him, it's the original cleaned up drawing, which was then inked and painted. Then he transitions into a little bit more of the rougher, looser styling. And we pass along and we see a pet shop. And in the pet shop are Bull and Peg from Lady and the Tramp. And just before the scene leaves, Lady comes into the picture. So it's really fun to look for.
Wooly was famous for reusing footage. He would reuse anything. In fact, everybody was aghast when he wound up using Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in the dance sequence in Robin Hood. And it was like, oh my God, you wouldn't.
It's not done extensively in this, but Wooly was very proud of his knowledge of old Disney animation and how it might apply within the context of a new production.
The other animators that worked on 101 Dalmatians were some very famous people. Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston worked on the dogs.
Frank did an amazing scene where the little puppy is stillborn. And that's incredible subtle animation.
Look, Pongo.
There's a scene which Ollie Johnson often talked about, which was where Perdita hides from Cruella de Vil under a stove in the kitchen. And the whole scene is conducted with Perdita in the corner. She can scarcely move. It's wonderful animation.
So it's very restrictive as far as action. You couldn't move her head much or anything, but in the end, I think that was the best way to handle the sequence.
Oh, Pongo.
And what moves we did put on them, I think paid off, and particularly the little one at the end where he gives her that little kiss. We've always felt that touching was very important in animation, and taking these little pencil drawings and having them touch has a big impact on the audience if it's done right.